This lesson is going to be on the topic diffusion. Diffusion, as it is defined, is the movement of solute particles from a region of higher molecular concentration to a region of lower molecular concentration until the particles are evenly distributed. We have to note that diffusion occurs in only fluids, that is, liquids and gases. This diagram explains the process of diffusion. As stated in the definition, diffusion occurs from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. In this very diagram that we are seeing on the screen, our left hand side is higher concentration. You could see that the particles there are more, and where it is typed as a lower concentration. Eventually, we will see these particles if diffusion has taken place. And let us note once again, diffusion occurs in fluids, that is, liquids and gases. The experiment that we just tried to look at, where we want to look at demonstrating diffusion in liquids, can be seen in this diagram. The very first diagram, you could see the potassium permanganate, any other dye that is being used in this. The red particles in the first diagram indicates a higher molecular concentration. The middle part shows how it has started moving towards the other parts, which are described as a lower molecular concentration. Eventually, at the last end, the particles, which are the dye molecules here, will become evenly distributed with the water molecules. An evenly distributed material. So at that stage, we'll see that you would have an observer standing at one corner of a classroom with the windows and doors closed. You spray the perfume and allow it to stand for some time. The observation that will be made is everyone in the classroom smells the scent of the perfume at the end of the day. This diagram tries to illustrate the process of diffusion in gases. On the left hand side, you will see before diffusion. On the right hand side, you will see after diffusion. Before diffusion, the red particles there indicate the perfume particles. And after it has been sprayed in the room, it had spread evenly, and that is what we see after diffusion. The red particles are evenly distributed in the space it finds itself, and at that stage, we will see that diffusion has taken place. Let us look at everyday examples of diffusion. Some of the examples, and the foremost is the smell of perfumes on or incense sticks. when someone is coming towards you, you can smell the perfume, and that is a typical example of diffusion. Another example of diffusion is the opening of soda or cold drinks bottle, and the carbon dioxide diffuses into the air. And remember, it is these carbon dioxide gases that gives us that fizzy sound when such drinks are opened. Let us look at another example. Dipping tea bags in hot water will also diffuse the tea in the hot water. Another example is small dust particles or smoke diffuse into the air and cause air pollution. These are but a few of everyday examples of diffusion. At this stage, let us look at some of the factors affecting the rate of diffusion. The first factor is concentration gradient. Here, we must have a higher molecular concentration to a lower molecular concentration. And before diffusion can take place, we must have a higher molecular concentration. So, the greater the concentration difference, that is between the higher concentration and the lower concentration, the faster the rate of diffusion. The second factor affecting the rate of diffusion is temperature. The higher the temperature, the faster the rate of diffusion. Here, let us take note. The molecules need energy to be able to move from one point to the other. I mean, the solute particles need energy to move from one point to the other. And when the temperature is higher, it gives the particles that energy to be able to move from one end to the other at a faster rate. That makes it come to the point that the higher the temperature, the faster the rate of diffusion. Another example of a factor that affects the rate of diffusion is the particle size. Now, if you have a smaller particle size, it would be able to move faster in a solvent, unlike a bigger particle size. So, when we have a particle size being small, it makes the process of diffusion to be fast. So we say the smaller the molecule, such as gas, the faster the rate of diffusion. The last but not the least is the state of matter or molecule. We've talked about the 3 states of matter as according to our syllabus. We're saying that gases have more spaces between them, and therefore they can move faster compared to liquids. And in solids, the particles are very much close to each other, and so they cannot move. That makes diffusion in gases to be faster than the diffusion process in liquids. So the smaller the state of matter, can also affect the rate at which diffusion takes place. Let us now look at examples of diffusion in plants. Since the process of diffusion takes place in living organisms, and typical examples of diffusion in plants, which ensures that our daily activities or processes in our bodies is able to take place. So let us look at them. The first example of diffusion in plants is the diffusion of carbon dioxide gas in plant leaf. You can see from the diagram that carbon dioxide gas and oxygen gas diffuse in and out during the process of diffusion. The pores you see on the leaf are referred to as the stomata. They are the openings through which gases leave or enter into the leaf. Another example of diffusion in plants is the absorption of mineral salts in the soil by plants. Beneath this diagram is written nutrients, and we can see N standing for nitrogen, K for potassium, and then P for phosphorus. These are nutrients that are necessary for the growth of plants. Now, when they are in abundance, they become a higher molecular concentration, and in the plants are lower molecular concentration. They are able to enter into the plant by virtue of diffusion. So, by the process of diffusion, some mineral salts or mineral salts that are necessary for the growth of plants are absorbed into the plants to enable them grow. Let's also look at examples of diffusion in animals. The first example of diffusion in animals is digested food molecules from the intestine to the blood. Example, amino acids. During the process of diffusion, large food substances are broken down into simple, soluble, and absorbable forms. And when these food materials and products of digestion takes place, that is, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and glycerol are produced. They enter into the blood around the intestine by the process of diffusion. So, this is a typical example of diffusion in animals. Another example of diffusion in animals is the removal of metabolic waste substances in the body cells into the blood stream. One of such examples is what takes place in the lungs, where a metabolic waste like carbon dioxide is removed and oxygen, which is a useful material, is absorbed into the blood capillary. And so in the diagram you will see the red arrows indicating the movement of oxygen gas into the blood capillary and the movement of carbon dioxide out of the blood capillary into the lungs. That is a typical example of diffusion in animals. Another typical example of diffusion in living organisms, that is animals, is the diffusion of oxygen and food nutrients from the mother's blood to the fetus. A developing fetus in the womb of the mother is able to access oxygen from the mother through the process of diffusion. That also goes for the diffusion of nutrients from the mother's blood to the fetus. These are typical examples of diffusion in animals. We end this lesson by looking at what we have learned so far. We have learned about the definition of diffusion. We have also looked at some factors that affect the rate of diffusion. We also looked at examples of diffusion in our daily life. Then we moved on to look at examples of diffusion in plants and that of animals. I believe you have learned something which you would be proud of and make good use of it in your daily lives. Have a nice day. Bye bye.